And I think that there actually is somewhat of a benefit to humanity in that we recognize that we're all vulnerable, and being nice to one another is makes each day go much better.
Cool. And then we have Mary Lou with us this year, and she is a wine expert, and she works with a company that brings winemakers together at these big expos. And I mean, I would totally love that job. And anyway, so Mary Lou, just introduce yourself a little bit, and then we're going to get started with our first tasting.
That sounds great. Yeah, I'll make it quick because I'm sure everyone's getting thirsty. I'm Mary Lou Cummings. I live here in Delaware County. I'm a transplant, though. I'm originally from the White Mountains of New Hampshire, of all places, but spent some time in Europe when I was younger and caught the bug for wine. Took a detour in my life and sold technology solutions for many years. And now I'm back. I'm back to my love for wine and have been studying for 5 years to get certain certifications and so forth. But it's been a lovely ride. And as Stacy said, I work for an organization that brings producers of wine together with buyers of wine. It's called Vin Expo. There's one in Paris in a few weeks, and I'm going to hop over there and see that. And then we do one in New York, where I'm really closely involved in that one. But it's great to be here, and I look forward to a fun time.
Good. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for curating the wine. If everybody looks on your box that has it, and the people who didn't get wine, this box is so cool. Can you read it? In Good, oh, sorry, I'm blurred. Anyway, it's called In Good Taste, and it's a company out of California, and they curate it, and there's these little teeny tiny bottles that are like two glasses, which are perfect for tastings. So anyway, they're wonderful. Thank you. All right, let's get to the first tasting. And I will apologize. At the time that we had printed the placemat, we didn't have the correct passion fruit truffle. So the one you're going to look at is purple and not the square that's on the placemat. So you want to pull that out and pour your wine and pour your beer. Let's start talking about chocolate, Chris.
It's this one here. So this is a newer technique that we're using where we're actually airbrushing the mold before we pour the chocolate into it. It gives it more of a visual effect. And obviously we're trying for the sort of the passion fruit colors. And this is one of our classic bonbons that we're doing. And it's just, there's not much to explain on this one. I think everyone should try it with their pairing and see how they like it.
And Bill, why did we check Golden Monkey with us?
We chose Golden Monkey with this because of the many varied aspects of the flavor profile to Golden Monkey. There is something of a fruity sweetness to it. It's an interesting sweetness because I think it sort of touches the brain early as sweet and then becomes dry as it fades. And I give credit to the Belgian Abbey yeast that we use in the fermentation of this beer for both of those characteristics, both the fruity aspects of it and the sweet to dry transition. It is strong at 9.5%.
No, I almost got mine gone already. So.
Well, it's early in the evening, Chris. That's totally logical.
Good. Okay.
But for the group, I'd like to probably tonight talk more about process and ingredients than necessarily flavor profiles. I'm hoping that the flavors will make an impression on you and you'll come to your conclusions. But so I sort of gave away the secrets on the Golden Monkey, but all whole flower hops from Germany in the composition, all two-row malt from Europe and Canada as well, and then the Belgian Abbey strain of yeast to make a light-bodied but pretty formidable beer at 9.5%.
Hallelujah.
Go ahead, Mary Lou. Talk about wine.
Yeah, for those of you with wine, we're starting with the Côte du Rhone. So I don't know if can you see that? Oh, it's hard. There we go. Maybe there. You just follow along with your placemat. The Rhone Valley is in the southeastern portion of France. There's two sections of the Rhone, the northern Rhone and the southern Rhone. Most of the Côte du Rhône appellation comes from the southern part. In fact, most of the wine in the southern Rhone, in the Rhone Valley, comes from the southern Rhone region. Very little of it, though, is white, and this happens to be a white. And typically, whites from the Côte du Rhône appellation are based on Grenache Blanc, which is a high acid grape, and it's rounded out with the Marsanne and Roussanne grapes. So like Bill, I'm not going to tell you what to taste. You know, you like it or you don't. Typically, when we taste a wine, though, we will use our olfactory system first to smell it and get some notes, and then taste it with our palate. And I think why we paired this truffle or this bonbon with it is, again, that acid in the wine is a great play with the intense fruitiness of the passion fruit. And I think it goes well. The wine will cleanse the palate, but also enhance the flavor of the bonbon. Very good.
Everybody liking those?
Happy to take any questions too.
Yeah, please. If people have questions, throw it in the chat.
You know, I'm all about the geography, the location, maps and stuff, so fun.
Yeah, speaking of questions, I just got an answer to a direct question, which I don't mind at all, but, you know, I think the subject matter was appropriate for everybody. So, you know, I do see this as an opportunity for learning. So please don't be shy with your questions. We can keep this pretty lively. We can't guess your questions. That's for certain.
All right. If anybody doesn't have questions, we're going to go to our first trivia question. And actually, we decided we would have 3 trivia questions with each pairing because we have 3 things to pair with. So our first one is, how many acres is the typical farm growing chocolate beans? And this is 90% of the farms in the world. How many acres are those? We have a 25. Nope. Nope. Nope.
Wow, Stacy's got a tough job here.
I am so
Yeah.
sorry. It's
That goes
really
fast.
small. The answer is small. 4 million is not it, Jay. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we had somebody that was guess out. Let's see. Oh, Julie, you're the winner. 12 is the answer. The next one is, what is the most sold beer in the United States? And this one is a really, but it is. Bud Light. Who said that? Michael or Brian?
Brian first, yeah.
You got it. Not what Bill wants to hear, but it's true. And then, what is the most widely planted grape in the world? PBR. Most planted grape. And I mean, you know, wine grape, guys. Keep going, keep going. Mark Cunningham, Cabernet. You will all receive one of our fabulous gifts. We're going to start off with t-shirts for you guys. All right, let's get to our next tasting, which is number 2 on the list. It is the ginger caramel, the brotherly love, and the rosé. So I'm going to let our experts take it away.
Should we keep in the same, should I keep going with this? Sure. So, I mean, it's interesting when people work for me, you know, they're already into production, but what they don't realize is all the thought process that goes behind it. And, you know, basically we work with a thing called flavor release. So we're working on the viscosity of the filling, the sizes of the bonbon itself, how thin the shell is, and all these things sort of tell a little story about how the flavor is released on the palate and how strong we should make the flavor profile and things like that. And also the blend of chocolates that we use also. So this is something that we came up with a couple of years ago. Well, I mean, when I came back from Europe, I didn't see anyone doing liquidy caramel. And I was really inspired by this Spanish restaurant called El Bulli and how you could like do this like amazing flavors and have it sort of explode in your mouth. So we started making these liquidy caramels, and they were in Vogue magazine as world's greatest caramel. But you'll see the chewy caramels are great because they slowly release the flavors, but just kind of goes whop, and then you have this amazing ginger flavor. So there's a lot of sort of thought process and design. I wouldn't say industrial design, but sort of design of the experience and the story we want to tell behind the chocolate. So we can talk about that a little bit later also.
Chris, that's an awesome setup for the beer. So I'll take the mic and roll next. In terms of flavor release, the way you described the release of the flavor and the sense of it, this next beer is India Pale Ale, IPA, and it is very much hop driven. Hops are product of the vine. They grow as herbal flowers, and they basically impart bitterness and aroma to the beer. In modern IPAs, it's certainly more aroma than bitterness. So I want you all to get your noses deep into your glass first and talk about release of expression. You really get a lot of hop character out of this. You may get grassy kind of notes. You may get other herbaceous notes from it. I'll let you maybe throw some of those in the chat if you're sensing them. And then after that, we built the body of this beer with some additional proteins to the grist. Traditionally, beer is made out of malted barley only. There is also some flaked oats in this and some wheat malt, which give it a bit more viscosity and a bit more density. And that creates a nice lush mouthfeel to it, a little more fullness in the swallow as it goes down as well. And so that's how we're trying to release the flavors that we have to work with within the ingredients, the malted barley, the hops, and of course the yeast for the overall fermentation profile.
You what?
Someone's asking me to bring back the Hop Ranch beer. Yes, I would love to do that someday. There's only like you and I that were drinking it, apparently. That's why it went away.
And someone else asked, why did you decide to use a can versus a bottle? And what does grist mean?
Okay, so yeah, I don't want to use terms that aren't well understood. Grist is the grains that are used in the mash of the beer. So we use malted barley primarily. Wheat malt is also sometimes utilized, and then there is also oats in this, flaked oats. Those are where the fermentables lie. So they are carbohydrates when they're in the grain form. We grind them, and that's considered the grist at that stage, and that's then added to warm water for a steeping cooking process that elicits all of those carbohydrates, turns those carbohydrates into simpler sugars, which our friends, the yeast, eat up and give us alcohol and carbon dioxide. Cans versus bottles. Yeah, that's a tough one. The consumer seems to like cans more. They recycle more readily. They're lighter to ship. And so bit by bit, we've been moving in that direction, but we didn't have a canning line in our operation until 2015. So again, we're trying to address the audience and play it the way the audience is looking for us to do.
Great, and I'll just jump in here about the Sangiovese. This is the rosé. So I'm not sure, this might be a good trivia question for next time, Stacy, but there's only one appellation or one place in the world that is allowed to create rosé by mixing red wine with white wine. And it made me think about that. It's not something you would guess, probably. It's tricky one, but as I talk, maybe throw what you think it might be in the chat. It's a type of wine too. It's a place and a type of wine. Alabama, that's pretty, yeah, that's a good one. But Sangiovese, you may or may not know that this is the grape that's in Chianti. But this particular wine comes from the Marche region, which is north of Abruzzo on the Adriatic coast in Italy. And this is made with the saignée method, meaning bled off. So they take the Chianti grape, which you know is a red grape, and they start the alcohol process, as Bill was even discussing, like beer. And at a certain point in time, they bleed off the wine just before all of the colors and tannins have gotten into the juice. So you come up with this very light, this is extremely light, I was surprised, very light colored wine. The place where the only place where you're allowed to do that, mix red wine with white wine, is in Champagne. So in Champagne, you're allowed to do that. And there's a lot of reasons why I could talk for 20 minutes about it, but that's the one place. This is a lovely, very light, very easy drinking wine. And I think it goes well with this burst of ginger flavor. Again, cleansing the palate, but giving a lightness to the intensity of the ginger flavor. Hope you're enjoying it as much as I am.
I have a quick question for everybody too. You know, we haven't been able to travel for 2 years, or not travel far or well or wide. And I'm just wondering, do any of you have plans to go anywhere, or a favorite place that's been a great inspiration for you? Other than Westchester? Chris, Bill, Mary Lou?
Oh, well, going to Westchester for Chris's chocolates is as exotic as anybody really needs at times. The whole world of flavor is right there. I don't have anything on my travel itinerary, and so I'll pass to the next person who's more exciting and interesting than I.
And it looks like people in our chat are saying Tuscany and Latin America and Key West and Palm Desert and Park City. So people are going, moving and shaking. That's great. I love that. Our next trivia questions have to do with places. One is, what is the dominant grape in Chianti?
Oh.
What did we just drink? Yes. Is it Tonders? Yes.
Who was paying
Got
attention?
it.
Basically,
It's the, which, Mary, what is it? It's this, is it Samonis?
Sangiovese. Sangiovese.
There you go. Thank you. The
welcome.
next question, which country consumes the most beer per capita?
I think I might know that one.
Nope, not Germany. Czech Republic. Mike A.
Yep.
Awesome. And the last one is, what state in the US grows chocolate beans? Hawaii. Who is DSA iPhone? Can you just tell me who you are? That would be helpful. Thanks.
Hi, Stacy. It's Diane.
Oh, Diane, thank you. Okay, next tasting. We're on number 3, Hop Devil Truffle.
so this was sort of
Another rosé wine.
a fun project for us. Bill was one of the first people I met when I moved back from Europe, and he was, as everyone knows, a huge supporter of other businesses in the Chester County area. So I thought, what better to do our anti-champagne truffle and do a beer truffle. So it's very similarly formulated as we would do a champagne truffle, but obviously not with the same decoration on the outside. So You even have the little gold flakes of the beer itself on top, but this is with the wonderful Hop Devil. We had before that, the Hop Devil and
We did a hop wallop for a period of
wallop.
time as well.
And it was all very confusing to me, Bill, but thank you for that. So this is just, again, it's a very classic, this is a typical, very Swiss style where you build the shell first and then you do a much lighter, creamier filling on the inside. Again, this helps with the release of the flavor. And also, much like Bill was saying before with the mouthfeel, those are things we consider also when building and creating a chocolate itself also. So. I love this.
Chris, you got everything right with this one for sure. I guess my first impression is that Hop Devil is a beer that's been in our portfolio since day one. So we're talking, 26 years just about now. It'll be 26 years next month. The IPA style was a lot different back in those days. And it was much more driven by the malt component, which is the leader of the two components. Back in those days, the bitterness of the hops was actually an attribute that brewers tried to play up a lot more than they do today in a more modern IPA like the Brotherly Love that we enjoyed earlier. So I feel that the Truffle really connected both of those aspects of this beer, in that there is this sort of sweet richness to it. And yet at the same time, there is a little bit of a bite to the beer as well that I think you got there in the Truffle also. I see someone in the comments said texture of mousse, and yes, I mean, it's a beautiful texture, right? You just break through that shell and you get a whole new flavor experience. And in a way, that's what we try and strive to do as we create beers, because we want the flavor to evolve. We don't want it to be one simplistic smack in the head kind of flavor. We want you to take in the maybe piney, citrusy aspects of the hops, get it on your tongue, and then you get some of the more richness that comes from the malt, and then the bitterness of the hops begin to play on this as well. So in developing the Hop Devil, we almost looked at this as a roller coaster ride. It's going to be exciting as the flavor climbs on your nose initially. The bitterness is sort of bracing and it's racing you down a rather dangerous track. And then the sweetness is the comfort of the malt in the finish. So we really like to look at building the flavors of a beer in a way that is, takes you through a couple different steps of an experience.
Someone suggesting that Victory puts these on their dessert menu, or maybe makes a dessert with these in it. That would be pretty phenomenal.
That's a very, very good idea. I don't know why that hasn't
Why haven't you
happened.
done that yet?
Oh, Ventoux. We're going back to the Southern Rhone, but in an area that's a little bit east. Ventoux is a mountain. If some of you are Tour de France fans, it's an over 6,000 foot high, very steep climb that is renowned to be very, very difficult in the Tour. This is based on Grenache, which is thought to be originating from Spain, that particular grape, and also has some Syrah and Cinsault in it. So you may recognize that as the GSM blend, which is very, very popular in the Southern Rhone and going into Provence as well. This wine we're starting to get more flavor. Do you agree in these wines from the beginning, especially from the Rosé and of Sangiovese? This has a bit more bitter component that pairs very well to the finish that I get on the chocolate as well. This almost hoppy bitterness that is quite pleasing. Yeah, very nice.
So here's a question for each of you. What is your go-to chocolate, beer, or wine that, is just your standby, that like when you've got a craving or a hankering, Chris, like what chocolate do you pick up as your favorite?
My chocolate, oh,
Yeah.
well, obviously, most likely something from a clot, but it's also interesting. I don't know how it is for Bill. Like when we have our product outside of work, we see it through completely different eyes, and it's really amazing. When I'm at work and I'm eating the chocolate, I'm looking for, craftsmanship, flavor profile, balance. But when I'm outside of work or when I take chocolate to a friend's house or a dinner party, it's like I can enjoy it for just, I sort of turn that other part of my brain off and enjoy it for the sake of just enjoying it. And it's always like amazing. I'm like, wow, this stuff is pretty good, actually. It's so funny how you have two brains when you work in the food industry. So, I don't think I have a favorite. I mean, everything I like or we make. So, I mean, I love our new Mondiants, which we don't have tonight, which are something really quite innovative. And we've gotten quite amazing feedback from, some of the top chefs in the world, including Eric Ripert on that. It's a very, very micro thin disc with a filling inside. That's
Yeah.
quite amazing. So I'm kind of on that sort of kick moment, but I love the ginger caramel. I love a bunch of, they all have their own little, it's like, do you like Miles Davis or do you like Britney Spears or like what do you call it, don't hate on the Britney, man. So they all have their time and place.
Hey, somebody has asked what your favorite commercial chocolate is.
Like the chocolate itself or the finished bonbon? Sorry to narrow that down.
It just says commercial it just says commercial chocolate. So maybe there's like, maybe you're at a 7-Eleven and you got to have a chocolate fix. What are you going
Oh, I
for?
mean, this is sort of like one of those questions that chocolatiers like sit around and ask, like, and there's only one real answer, and it's Kit Kat.
Really? Wow. How about that, guys? Kit Kat.
Yeah, I'm personally off the record. I'm more of a Snickers guy. Like if I'm going to be eating that, it's probably because I have another 6-hour drive ahead of me, and I get a dark coffee and a Snickers, and I'm good for another couple hours. But yeah, I like Kit Kat. So
That's great.
Dark coffee and Snickers. You could be a Formula One driver with that combo. That's.
I know. If I was in Europe, I'd have a non-filtered cigarette on top of it. But so.
How about you, Bill?
I guess the question was the chocolate part, right?
No, well, it could be chocolate, but I think they're asking for your beer. What is your beer, your go-to victory beer or any beer?
Mm-hmm. My go-to victory beer is Prima Pils. I love that creation because it offers so much flavor, so much refreshment at a relatively low ABV of 5.3%. And I'm not a volume beer drinker, but the fact of the matter is it's so enticing that, I may reach for that third one and still be, in good shape and refreshed by it.
And
But
did you develop that one?
yes. Yeah. So Ron and I both studied in Germany, and we were exposed to a lot of great Pilsner beers. At the time when we came back to the United States to work here, Miller Lite was actually had the tagline of the true taste of a genuine Pilsner beer. And after our time in Germany, we're like, what is this blasphemy? This is not Pilsner beer. Not to dismiss Miller Lite. It's very popular for some reasons, but it's not a true Pilsner beer. So we took it upon ourselves to make what we felt was a true Pilsner beer in the American spirit of being a little bit more assertive. So we went heavier with the whole flower hops. We gave it a very expressive nose, and probably the best compliment and the best memory I probably have been able to generate in my 26 years at Victory was when an older gentleman sat down with his son and probably son-in-law, and he raised a glass of Prima Pils to his lips, took a sip, and he said, "I remember beer that tasted like this." So the fact that we were able to produce something that took him back to a place where he was happier was really magical for everybody.
And if a victory beer isn't available, what would you go to?
Gosh, there's a lot of great beers in American craft beer, and I have too many friends in it to really go name dropping. Allagash came up earlier in the conversation, and they make phenomenal beers, and Rob's a good friend of mine. But I will say something somewhat embarrassing, and that is the Anheuser-Busch InBev brewery bought a traditional Belgian brewery, the Bastille's brewery, that make a triple, same style as Golden Monkey, triple Carmelite. And I swore off of it because of that. I felt, victimized by this new ownership. And I had it months later, and it was still as great as ever. So sometimes, you have to look beyond the facade and realize the integrity is still there with the producers.
Nice. Mary Lou, what's your go-to wine?
That's one little difference between Chris and Bill and myself. I represent the producers. I'm not the producer. So it's, I'm in a little unique position. But when people ask me what my favorite wine is, I say I haven't had it yet. It gives me an excuse to have more wine. But I've got to say that I love complex white wines, like Viognier, which is from the Northern Rhone in Côte-Rôtie, actually not Côte-Rôtie, but just south of there. Chateau Gruyère is the appellation that I really love. Also a nice white Burgundy, which is Chardonnay, but the grapes are grown in certain terroir and treated in a certain way to produce a very unique wine that, well aged, will blow your socks off. You're like, wine can taste like this? It's just a very life-changing experience. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to taste a lot of really nice wines in this even short time that I've been doing this. And I've tasted phenomenal cult cabs from the West Coast, from Napa, Sonoma. And I've tasted phenomenal Amarone from Italy, outside of Verona. But still, my go-to would be a complex white that's got some age on it.
That's great. Thank you. All right, let's go to trivia now. We've got, in the US, a barrel contains how many gallons of beer? How many gallons of beer? We have 55, 42.
Oh, we're getting close.
We are close.
I like 99 bottles. We're getting further away, guys.
Oh yeah,
Right.
keep going. Yeah. Close, Ethan.
So close.
Close, Gigi. Keep going. 31.
Oh,
31, Shannon. You got it. All right. During which war were soldiers sometimes paid in chocolate? During which war? Nope. Revolutionary War, Jennifer. Thank you. And then the last one is, what is the biggest kind of wine bottle? And extra credit if you know what the size is. I did not know this. It is not a Magnum. It's an Uber Magnum. No, that's not it either. Anybody? Someone in my house just said bathtub. That is not it. I will tell you, it's 20 bottles worth of wine. Nope. Mary Lou, you want to tell us? Oh, Costco box wine. I like that, but that's not it either.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's a Nebuchadnezzar.
That is a Nebuchadnezzar. There you go. Ethan, it's a Nebuchadnezzar.
Sounds like a Willy Wonka chocolate, but
It does sound like a Willy Wonka chocolate.
There you go,
Thank you.
Chris. You got a collaboration with Mary Lou now. You need to make a Nebuchadnezzar.
That's right.
it's going
that
to
would
be
be
how many
great.
gallons? What's the size?
That is 20 bottles of
20
wine.
bottles.
It is 15 liters of wine.
It takes
15
special.
Chocolate with 15 liters of ganache inside. Sounds kind of disgusting myself, but we can do it with caramel. How's that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. All right. We are on number 4. So we're on Whirlwind Wit. And then I am butchering all these European wines. I do want to tell you guys. So, you know, we have these international wines. We had originally had wines. I think they were all from the Pacific Northwest, and they were excellent too. But these are really super. Anyway, and the blood orange jelly, which looks delicious.
Should I dive in?
Yeah.
So I saw a question about the thingy behind me. So as I think the text was, is that the correct term? So I have a very maybe strange background. My father started actually the first African history department in the country. So we lived in Senegal and other places like that, and a little bit in Paris and also London growing up. So I have this sort of strange history of a small child in these interesting countries, and then also living in a farm in Wisconsin where we went out and did foraging and for, you know, all sorts of morels and wild asparagus and things like that. So I've kind of a strange background of traveling in different countries, but also then sort of the farm to table movement early on, and trout fishing in, you know, little streams in Wisconsin and so forth. So this is actually a blind that my mom sort of hammered together years and years ago, and I still cherish it to this day. And each little design has a symbolic and story about a certain, you know, religious symbol on it. So yeah, we use it as background. It's a little homage to my parents. So
That's awesome.
that's a short answer for that. So another thing we do at Eclat is, you know, we're trying to improve the flavor, you know, with functionality and also design and style and the shape. And the pâte de fouille is normally a square, but like, who wants to put something soft and jelly-like that's square in your mouth? If you make it round, it's just much more sort of sensuous and sort of delicious and sort of coats your palate more. So we've started making them in domes, and seems to have caught on. Unfortunately, with social media, if you post anything within a week, someone else is doing what you designed. So it's a good thing or bad thing, but this is just a lovely new design that we're doing with, and we're doing multi-flavored ones now, and we're injecting another filling inside, and we're kind of we haven't really hit our stride with the pâte de fouille, but we're really working on some funky stuff with grapefruit and other liqueurs and things like that. So, but it's, again, you know, we would use classic techniques, classic recipes that I learned with all the years. I was over 14 years in Europe, and then we sort of change it. And again, we're really just, you know, so inspired by, you know, Ames or you know, Ray and Charles Ames or Dieter Rams, who did all the old designs of in Germany for Braun, and so we're like, how do we take something that's old but update it, but also increase the experience and the story just by the shape or how it's served to you. So how's that for everyone?
It's a beautiful, delicious treat, Chris. I think it's fun for everyone to hear your thoughts on the design of the substance as well, not only the flavor of the substance. You definitely are playing the game on multiple levels, and we are all the beneficiaries of that. I think that, you know, that sort of pillowy round dome shape is obviously much more akin to fruit to begin with. And one of the things that Mary Lou and I have not really spoke to is the visual appeal of our products as well. I mean, these things actually have to look good to you to make a positive impression on your brain so that you'll accept them for all the other attributes they're going to deliver. But I think your products, Chris, really do a great job of considering that up front.
Well, even like the bubbles in your beer, like the carbonation, like how big or small and all those little things, I'm sure play a huge role in your design or what yeast you're using and things. I'm not the expert, obviously, but I've
You're not
studied
the
this for
expert,
years.
but you are correct in that assumption. Yes. The way we ferment and the way the product comes across in the delivery is, of course, important for sure. So let me get on to this, I guess. This is our Whirlwind Wit. This was a beer that we probably first introduced into our lineup around 2001. Wit is a reference to the Belgian term for white. And typically these beers, when they were first produced, were much more cloudy than this one is. And the sediment in the beer made it have almost a white characteristic to it rather than sort of the orangey aspect that it has now. And these are very unique beers in that there is, oh yeah, Chris has got the classic glass, Hoegaarden.
I tried.
Started by Pierre Celis, a revival when the style went dark again. At any rate, these beers use wheat malt. That's part of the haze that you see in it. There's more protein to the wheat. So we get back to somewhere where we were with the Brotherly Love, and we get a little bit richer, fuller mouthfeel to this beer. Those proteins providing that. And there is an addition of coriander seed, very, very subtle. You may not be pulling that out of it, but there's also an addition of flaked orange peel, curacao orange peel. It's a very intense flavor that when it's dried, it becomes more intense. And then that goes into the mash as well. So we're pretty much following a very standard Belgian recipe in producing this beer. Yet we did give a twist to it last year when we re-released it, and we put a little bit of blood orange and grapefruit essence into it as well, juice. Those are trying to get us back to a little bit of the bitter bite, the pith of the fruit that is a little bit more in line with a current IPA as well. So we basically modernized this beer slightly in the second iteration last year. And I thought it went really, really well with what you had to offer, Chris. Good job.
It's unfortunate the Hoegaarden Brewery is probably the most unsexy brewery to go to, but it's, yeah. Oh, well, can't win
As
them
I
all.
often like to say, there's no brakes on a revolution. They revived a whole style that had been dead, and then everybody else took it over, and now they're sort of like just lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, it's not Orval,
No.
which is a gorgeous old monastery in a very small valley in
Yeah.
Belgium.
What do you got, Mary Lou?
I was muted, sorry. We have a Coteau Bourguignon. So Bourguignon is Burgundy. So actually my background is in Burgundy. Actually, that's this town of Beaune right there, which is the heart of the Burgundy wine trade. Just south of Dijon, if you know where that is. Anyway, in this blend, this is a blend. Most Burgundy wines are not blends. The reds are Pinot Noir and the whites are Chardonnay. It's very, very simple. Now, I mean, there are a couple of other minor grapes, but they're mostly used in like the Crémant, which is a sparkling wine, and so forth. But really, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay is where the simplicity of Burgundy ends. Then it gets very, very complex with terroir. Each little plot has its own flavor profile, or the grapes that are grown there produce a different flavor profile. But one thing I really would like those of you who have this wine is to swirl it and smell it. There's a candied essence there, and this is one that I will talk about, like candied apple. And that plays very, very well with this pâte de fruits, which is like a candy, and I say that in a very respectful way, Chris. It's delicious and intense, but it matches and pairs very well with this wine. And where does that candied flavor come from, you may ask? Well, it comes from this is a blend I mentioned. There's Pinot Noir and there's Gamay in here. Now, the Gamay grape is the grape that is used to make Beaujolais Nouveau, which Beaujolais is just south of Burgundy. I mean, you could ride down the highway and not even know that you went from Burgundy into Beaujolais. It's that close. But the grapes change there because the terroir changes. There's a lot of granite that starts to crop up in Beaujolais. And to go back to the Gamay grape, it's a very vigorous grape, vigorous vine, and it needs to be tamed. And it can produce kind of gamey flavors in the wine unless you treat it in a special way. And this is treated in a special way in that it undergoes what's called semi-carbonic maceration, which is a different method for making wine, wherein the whole cluster is put into the vat, and it's left to ferment. In each berry of grape has its own fermentation that happens inside, and it just produces these kinds of candied flavors that Beaujolais is known for. So that's where we're getting that flavor, is from that Gamay, or that aroma. And then I think there's also a little César in here. César is a grape that is it's a cross between a couple grapes, but it provides a lot of the tannin structure here because Pinot Noir doesn't have a ton of tannins. Another grape that does have a lot of tannins is like Cabernet Sauvignon. Anyway, I'm kind of getting my geek on there. Sorry.
Hey, somebody has a question for you. They said, Mary Lou, please expand upon the bottle and cork choices that a maker would select.
A lot of let me talk about the bottles first. A lot of it is culture and history. Let me grab something. I just happen to have a German wine here, and this is the flute bottle. Actually, it's not German. It's from Alsace, so it's just across the border. So it's in France, but they're influenced by the Germans, and that's just history. Burgundy has the high shoulder or the low shouldered bottles. If I have one. Oh, that's another one. There we go. This is a Burgundy bottle. The shape, if you can see it. This is actually a Rhone Valley wine, a Cornas.
Do you have those all hidden in the wine field behind you, or?
Isn't that
They're
what it
just
looks
right
like?
here. This is a
He
very
like ducks
small.
into the rows and pulls out bottles of wine.
And then the Burgundy ones have the high shoulder and very straight. And it really goes back to culture and history. And as it pertains to corks, there's a lot of history there, but natural cork has been favored in history, once it was, produced in an efficient manner. But there are problems with natural cork in that it can harbor cork taint, which is it's a bacteria and produces something called TCA that really renders the wine unpalatable. It tastes like wet cardboard. So many producers have gone to synthetic corks or a screw cap. It really doesn't mean that the wine isn't good or is of poor quality. It's a way for them to preserve it and to have a less of a chance to impart this cork taint. I was going to say something else. I'll think of it.
Mary Lou, I
That's a good question, though.
think you did a great job with that answer, because in my training in brewing in Germany, and I'm sure Chris can elaborate as well. You run into some of these traditional biases, and some of them are for very good reason, and some of them are just simply because that's the way it was done. And you'll get those people who really just like want to continue believing in things that can be, you know, can be attacked because it's not necessarily true. One of the most liberating things in my study in Germany actually happened the very first day of class. The instructor, German of course, said, if the audience wishes to have beer with foam at the bottom of the glass, we must make beer with foam at the bottom of the glass. And, you know, it just really sort of set our sights on, yeah, we're going to learn how to make everything traditionally and the best way possible. But if the audience wants something different, we have to innovate. We have to be there to address that need.
It's so un-German.
It's so un-German. It was shocking.
The classic German line is, why do you do it that way? And they would say, because we've always done it that way.
No, because they would say it is the way.
It is the way.
Yeah. But I think even because of probably bottling lines or bill and other things, that beer bottles are, and for shipping, are usually pretty standardized in Germany at least, but more generally. But the beer glasses, like a Kolsch glass to a Bavarian glass, is, you couldn't be more opposite with these little tiny Stange thing, and then down in Bavaria you get the big liter. So it's that's where I see the real difference of how you drink your beer, at least in Germany.
But that's also a great illustration of the practicality of, you know, the packaging is, we're going to put the product into a package that we can control and the results can be standardized. Yet when it comes to expressing the flavor of that product, there are many different options, and some are better suited than the other. So I think it really does, you know, talk to the richness of the industry and the true integrity of producers wanting the expression of their products to be as spot on as possible.
Well, I have a question for you, Bill. After someone asked, how does the shape change the flavor in chocolates? And that's something we're constantly sort of experimenting with. And you know, basically one of the mondiants that we do, again, the discs, or, you know, the more surface area you have, the faster it melts, so the more explosive the flavors are going to be. If you want something, the flavors to sort of seep out and sort of like gradually hit your palate, then we make it more round or a little bit larger volume as far as less in surface. So, you know, that's what things we're sort of playing with, is also, you know, how much cocoa butter is in the chocolate and how fast it melts in your palate, and things like that. Is shape is definitely a lot to do with it. And that's why we have everything from that one disc to a round shape to, of course, we're going to hit the our square, our sort of mid-century modern shapes very soon. But I hope you don't mind, Bill. How do you feel when someone wants an orange slice or lemon slice on their wheat beer?
We try and do our best to, well, number one, we immediately do what they're interested in. And then we follow it up with explaining why we don't normally offer it that way. And, you know, we try not to be too didactic, you know, assuming that someone has traveled enough and has had other experiences with beer and the interaction with fruit so that they know what they're asking for. But at the same time, we do kind of defend our position to say, we put these flavors in this beer. We are trying to offer it as the complete expression of that beer. If you wish to enhance it with something else or change it with something else, we'll do our best to accommodate you.
Yeah, there's no salt and pepper shakers at a good restaurant on the table. So if the chef, or in your case, the brewmaster, wants to serve it a certain way, at least try it first before you know, that's the way I look at it. But
well said. Agreed.
Very much.
All right, we have a few trivia questions for you. Are you ready? How about this? What shape were Hershey Kisses in 1907? Melissa Hawes, you got it. It's a square. Can you imagine that? A square. The next one is, Brewmeister's Snake Venom is claimed to be the strongest beer in the world. What is the ABV for Snake Venom? Anybody? It's higher than any of the ones you're saying. 67 is right. Who was that? Ryan Winter. 67. Can you imagine that, Bill?
That's a shocking number. I've had a 43% ABV beer from Brewdog in Edinburgh, Scotland, Tactical Nuclear Penguin. And that was more like a sherry than it was actually a beer. So
Seems like you could put that in your car engine too. Crazy. All right. Jackie O's favorite champagne. Yes, Mark Cunningham. Thank you. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. All right. I guess we are on to our next number 5 tasting, which is Merry Monkey. And then our red wine, which I can't pronounce. And the roasted banana peanut cube. Yes, banana nana dana is spelled wrong. Sorry about that.
So there was a question about shape, and you know, if you look at something round, you put it in your mouth, you don't really think much of it. But when you think something square, you kind of, I wouldn't say you get like intimidated by it, but you definitely have a more like, you know, standoffish than you would with something round. So there's a little sort of mental game that we're playing a little bit in our head. As I sort of alluded to earlier, I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, you know, famous for Frank Lloyd Wright, and I'm old enough now, unfortunately, or fortunately, to have grown up through the mid-century modern sort of furniture and things like that. So we're always pushing sort of to do different styles. And so we do very classic style, extremely modern style, like the Mondiance. But then I was fascinated by the mid-century modern, especially now it's sort of had a rebirth. So we started playing with these lovely little cubes. And, you know, we're doing a couple things here. We're layering the fillings to sort of develop in your palate when you eat it in different ways. We also play with how much of each filling we add into the praline. We also add a structure not only for attractive sort of a, you know, nice accent, but also sort of tells you instinctively that that's top. It tells you how to eat the truffle, or sorry, it's like an anti-truffle, I guess. And so those are the things that we're constantly kind of thinking about when we're creating a chocolate. So I'll probably take this in half a bite.
Yeah.
Dave asked a question about that.
Those are delicious. Wow.
you're impressing the crowd, Chris.
Yeah,
trying.
somebody in my house is asking, what did he do to get the banana to taste like this? It is unbelievable.
Well, roasting is, you know, people talk about caramelization, but it's actually Maillard, which is not, you're not technically caramelizing it, but you're reducing it so you're getting these caramel notes to it. And that's one of the techniques we use. We're caramelizing it, but also reducing it so we get more of a like flavor profile to that. But again, it's how we layer it, and you know, we sort of play with a different design of do we put the banana on top or do we put the peanut butter on top, and all those things matter with how your mouth is constructed or put together, that it will take up the flavors in different ways. So you get this one flavor, then you get this other flavor, and then actually you get both flavors together. So again, you know, we're trying to tell a story along with all these different creations. Some are like the passion fruit is pretty straightforward because passion fruit is so amazing to begin with. But this we want sort of to develop in different storylines and have a little bit of banana and then a little bit of peanut butter and then both, and then go back to the peanut butter. And then, so we're having this sort of yin yang kind of thing going on is what we're trying for.
And I'm not sure you're giving yourself enough credit, because what you spoke of, the Maillard reaction, in order to get that that faux caramelization is such a razor's edge, and it exists in brewing as well. In order to just like warm the flavor up enough, but not degrade it. And I think you're really right on that perfect edge with this one.
Thanks. No, that means a lot. No, we keep pushing, like, you know, and I still don't think we've hit our stride. There's so much more that can be developed, and I keep going back to the Mondiant, and that's a new style chocolate that it's basically a flattened truffle. If you've ever seen Bambi, the old cartoon of Bambi meets Godzilla, it's kind of jokingly inspiration. You guys can Google it afterwards, and you know how we make this flattened truffle. But it's yeah, I still think, you know, spraying molds with flavored or colored cocoa butter, you know, but it distracts from the cocoa or the chocolate flavor. So you know, we want chocolate to taste like chocolate, so we're just keep pushing the envelope of what is possible and how we can sort of increase. But the main thing is not to be sort of kitschy or sort of gimmicky by like putting bacon in chocolate or something like that. We really want to increase the sort of, by design, you know, by doing the parallel bars where we have 2 flavor profiles, 6 lines and things like that, where the flavor actually changes while you eat the chocolate bar and things like that. That's kind of the new direction for us, is you know, sort of almost MoMA inspired. So we did for a while sell our parallel bars in MoMA gift shop, and that was, to me, kind of one of our greatest goals, to be kind of like to fit with all those amazing artists and designers. So
Somebody asked on the chat in a chocolate class that they were told never to chew on chocolate, or I guess chew on chocolate, and to let it melt on your tongue. Do you agree with that, or do you think you can bite into it and chomp away?
I think it's sort of, you bite it, you know, move it around, get it to speed up the melting process a little bit, and then, you know, so you know, if you didn't bite at all, you'd kind of be sitting there kind of like, you know, so I think it's, you know, again, that's the speed of how you want the flavor to hit your the you know, profile, and so that's, you know, do you just eat the whole thing and chew it up and swallow it, or do you like savor it? The same way with wine or beer, like, do you just swallow it, or do you like keep it in your mouth? And also the flavor profile will change with the temperature. When it starts warming up in your mouth, you get flavor. The beer, obviously, the temperature with wine, it will taste differently. So I hope that sort of answered the question.
Mhm. Bill, how about Merry Monkey?
Or the Tootsie Roll Pop, I guess, you know, we know you're supposed to, you know,
Then there's that.
yes. I think it's 2 licks of a Tootsie Roll Pop, right?
I believe it is.
So Merry Monkey is an
3,
opportunity. It's an opportunity that Ron and I actually sort of neglected, or I would even say avoided, for a number of years. There is inherent to this style of beer, Belgian triple, a lot of sort of innate spicy characteristics. And holiday beers, Christmas beers in particular, are associated with spices, nutmeg, ginger, cinnamon, and so forth. And there's some delicious examples of them, many of which were more prevalent when we first opened our brewery in 1996. But we appreciate the Golden Monkey for what it was, and it wasn't until we created the variant of Sour Monkey and we saw the great response we got from our audience with that variant that we said we were encouraged by that, to say, well, you know, maybe we can push the monkey in a few other directions. And prior to Sour Monkey, we actually did Chardonnay wine barrel aged Golden Monkey, the White Monkey, which was a beautiful expression, because it actually had almost like a snickerdoodle cookie kind of characteristic that came out of this beer. So in other words, we bit by bit, we became encouraged to be bold enough to turn our Golden Monkey, this wonderful creation, into a holiday beer with a bit of nutmeg, with a bit of cranberry essence. And, you know, it was a very deft tightrope walk in order to retain the soul of the Golden Monkey, yet take it in a place that very much sort of said, you know, hello, it's the holidays. And hopefully we hit that. I believe we did, but I'm not sure everyone will agree. It comes in at the same Golden Monkey alcohol by volume of 9.5%. And the spicy aspects of it are right there on the nose. Yet right behind them, I believe, is the Golden Monkey heart and soul. And for 2 years now, it's been a really fun addition to our lineup. And gosh, I think Chris has done a really nice job with this chocolate and how this beer comes together with it.
Yeah, it's really delicious. Somebody asked here if you've ever had a beer or developed a beer that you were disappointed with. Or
There
maybe-
have been things that have not performed to our expectations. In recent memory, we hung on tight to a beer that we did called Homegrown, and it was basically a lager fermented version of IPA, because in our minds, it was like, wow, that's the best of both worlds. You get this incredible expression of hops from America, and you get this cool, smooth lager fermentation. And it resonated with a lot of people, but not enough people to warrant it. And that was kind of a slow death. Those things will happen.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
It's
And then-
sad when you develop something that you're so passionate about and the general public doesn't. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're in denial for a
had
long
any-
period of time, and then you just focus on the numbers, and you're like, the numbers are clear. This is not achieving orbit. It's coming back to Earth.
How about in chocolate, Chris? Anything like that?
I mean, one job I had is sort of interesting. You know, I almost feel like, what's the Tom Hanks movie? You know, you're pulling from. I sort of alluded again. You're pulling from so many experience in the past that one of my jobs was to reformulate recipes for a mid-sized company in Europe where we're trying to recreate a line cheaper from their competitor. So, you know, and so I was reformulating recipes all day long and got pretty good at knowing what's going to happen before I actually go and make the physical recipe. So I haven't had any, I wouldn't call them blunders. The funnest one that I kind of come to mind is we were playing around with a white ganache, and then I added lemon peel to it. So we had a lemon ganache, and then I did a tapenade or olive paste on top of that. So it's sort of this like Moroccan salty lemon. And we're definitely, we're friends with Jennifer Carroll, who owns this amazing restaurant in Philly called Spiced Finch. And she's really on this sort of Moroccan kick right now. And so we're definitely working on sort of a preserved lemon truffle. And I think I'd love the saltiness and the lemon and, you know, the oysters, you know, I love oysters with just a little bit of citrus on it. And so, yeah, the oyster, I think the vanilla, sort of the lemon vanilla black olive tapenade was the weirdest one that was really quite good that people are scared of, I think. But I haven't had any, maybe I'm just blocking. I must have had some blunders, but I can't think of any at the moment.
Well, they have to trust you because you've already done mushrooms with chocolate and it works amazingly well. So
Wait, rephrase that.
the
Never done mushroom with
porcini,
chocolate.
a truffle, porcini.
Even
Is
in
that
college.
a truffle? Sorry about that.
There was that time in Santa Fe, but we don't want to talk about it.
All right, Mary Lou, you want to talk about our wine?
Sure. If I can just take a minute, I remembered what I wanted to say about the cork. So the natural cork, if I can go back to that, it allows for minute exchange of air. And what that does is it allows for a very slow but gradual and somewhat controlled aging. So if you find a wine that has a cork, has a screw top or a synthetic cork, those wines are not expected to age well. Those are wines that are meant to be bought and consumed within a year or two, no more than a year and a half, really. But natural cork wines, especially the pricier ones that you're getting from Burgundy or Bordeaux, or even from Italy, parts of Italy. They allow for that slow exchange of air, which regulates the aging. So I just wanted to say that. This wine is Nerello Cappuccio. That's the name of the grape, and it's a cousin to a grape that you may have heard of called Nerello Mascalese. This wine is from Sicily, so the grapes are grown in very volcanic soils, which this grape does very well in. And much like the chocolate, which is delicious, by the way, this wine has a layered effect to it. Again, you can smell the aromas, but then as you taste it, there's certain flavors when you begin tasting it, then there's the mid palate, then there's the finish, much like the truffle. So I'll let you each describe to yourself or your partner or whomever you're with what those layers are to you, but that's kind of what I get, and it makes a great pairing.
It is excellent. I have a question for you guys too. I'm pretty sure Chris has kids. I know Mary Lou does. Bill, do you have kids? Do you have kids, Bill? Do they know, do your kids know that you're like the rock star in beer and chocolate, and do they share your passion in it?
My daughters share my passion for flavor, not so much in alcoholic beverages. And it wasn't until they got to college when sort of the boomerang came and smacked them in the head. And people were like, wait, that's your dad? That's weird.
That's funny.
It is funny. It's funny to see them deal with it too,
That's good.
because
How
I'm
about you?
still just a grumpy old jerk to them. So, and live in that duality.
That's right. You're still dad.
Yeah.
Mary Lou, how about your daughter?
Yeah, she said she's 17, almost 18. So her famous quote is, "You do you, mom. You know, you do you." We're teaching her how to smell and appreciate aromas and detect them. Like we started with herbs when she was really young. So she appreciates it, but she's not a lover, and she doesn't have a strong sense of smell. At least it may, or maybe it's just not developed yet.
Mm.
But she's happy that we're happy, that I'm happy.
Good.
I think the experience needs to be somewhat osmotic, right? You just create the environment and
Right. They need to
take
find
in
it themselves.
what interests them. They throw away what's not. And then on some bizarre day in the future, they're like, oh, wait, I remember that. And that was significant.
Mm-hmm, exactly. You create the atmosphere and let them grow
That's
into
neat.
it.
Chris, how about your kids with chocolate?
I don't have kids.
Oh,
Well,
you
I have
don't?
my
I'm
cat.
sorry. I thought you did. Sorry.
Well, you never know, but
That could have been that
especially with
toad
all
thing
that
in
frog
Santa
making
Fe.
thing going on in Santa Fe, but no. Bill, first of all, that's more South America with the toads and frogs. Just
Yeah, I know, but you're getting closer there.
so. I just think it's funny, you know, these stories that Paul McCartney tells about, like, you know, when his kids were young and like it's like, no matter, I mean, we're not Paul McCartney, but you know, it's so funny that someone that famous and just iconic still gets no respect from their kids too, you know. So I think it's kind of funny.
And it's really the way it should be, right? I mean, you know, you're supposed to be a dad. What you do for a living is just paying the bills.
There you
I
go.
mean, African history is a very small field, and so, but those who taught it and stuff, you know, when they find out who my father is, it's like, it's like, well, sorry. So, yeah, it's pretty funny.
Someone says the Paul McCartney of chocolate. That's true, I think. Too.
I'm curious about the comment right before that. It was was it in response to Chris's answer to not having kids?
What's that? Oh,
Want
want some
some?
kids? Yeah, Jay's probably willing to give one or two. I think they're college age, so that costs them a lot of money.
Bill, thanks for pointing that out.
All right, I have a couple trivia questions before we start with our last tasting. So the first one is, confectioner Leo Hirschfeld commemorates his daughter Clara in the sweet he invented with her nickname. What was that sweet? It's a chocolate treat. I'm just giving you that clue.
Can we define chocolate treat, first of all? But
Yep, Leo Hirschfeld.
I like Kit Kat. That's a good answer.
Kit Kat's a good answer. Anybody with kids or grandkids, you can nickname them Kit Kat. Nope, not Baby Ruth. Not Snickers. Whatchamacallit's for that parent that has 6 or 8 kids, I think. Melissa Hawes, Tootsie Roll is right. That's great. All right. What is the name of the beer commonly consumed by the Simpsons? All right. Oh, everybody got that. Okay. It is Duff beer, by the way. Maybe that's what you need, Bill, is like a Duff commemorative beer or something. All right. And the last one for wine is, how fast can a cork fly out of a champagne bottle? Billy Beer. Pretty fast. Not The Sound of Speed. Nope. Very close, Mark. Keep it going. Keep it going. No. All right. We have Mario. You got it. 50 miles per hour. All right, let's head off to our last tasting, which is Dirt Devil Bordeaux and Bourbon Pecan.
can I interject as sort of a question to Bill and sort of something I've been thinking about for a while? We both went to Europe to learn our craft, and I think it's really interesting that I see that a lot of Bill's beer are very, I hope you don't mind me describing someone else's product, Bill, but simple, but then the flavor is just so just complex. So it's simple but complex. And it's interesting that it really matters, I think, where you learn and then you take that knowledge and expand it. So I've always thought there's sort of similarities with our sort of both of our philosophies a little bit, with just sourcing and the product itself. So
I agree with you, Chris, and I also feel that we're a product of our time as well. We were able to introduce some European concepts to an American audience when there was an awareness, or at least an opening, let's just say, that consumers were curious about the origin of their flavors, the origin of the ingredients in those flavors. So I think that both of us sort of played that moment very well in order to be able to express ourselves and entertain an audience that was willing.
yeah, I mean, I joked before about, in Germany, you asked a question, why do you make it that way? Or why do you use that? Because we've always made it that way. And their quality was so amazing that they've actually sometimes stopped learning, because they already have such amazing system and protocol with like bread baking and things like that. But once you learn those, just the techniques and also the theory behind great bread baking or chocolate making, and then, a lot of things like we talked about, they make it so traditionally that they won't go, like in Germany, of course, you can't put orange peel or lemon peel. And so I'd love to go to Belgium and get the funky beers over there, because I love my Kush. It's mother's milk to me. But it's fun to have a beer with some spices or a little bit of orange notes and things like that. And, sort of like to be American where we have no, tradition, but we learn from the classic. It's sort of, I think, a really amazing combination of asking you questions. What if we did this? Versus in Germany, they're improving, but very rarely do they bend a lot of those rules because of the cultural, aspect.
No, those are fantastic observations. And if anyone doesn't want to hear us blather on about this, please let us know in the chat. But I think not only was it the timing that we had available to us with the traditions we were exposed to and how we could synthesize them into an American audience, but I feel that, there was also the inherent things or the way we want to express, because as far as I'm concerned, I can talk about the nuances of beer flavor or chocolate flavor, or even to some extent wine flavor in detailed nuance for a long period of time. But at the end of the day, especially in my product, beer only has to do two things for me. It has to provide excitement and comfort. And those may sound like opposing ends of the spectrum, and to a certain extent they are. Whatever you enjoy most on any given day, the slider could be more on the exciting edge or could be more on the comfortable edge, but it's got to just give you both. And I think that helps me reduce all the impulses to do crazy things down to what is important here. A little bit of excitement, a lot of comfort, or a lot of, excitement and a little bit of comfort. And that's really just how I go to work every day.
Question for you, Bill. Does Victory grow its own hops?
We don't. We're on a scale where we could not possibly grow all of our hops. We had experimental hop fields at our Parksburg brewery for about 4 seasons, and we ended up canceling that program because nothing we developed there was commercially viable for the beers that we wanted to produce.
I will tell you, I've been in Pittsburgh to the beer church, and they have an outside garden that has hops growing, and it smells so amazing. You need to plant some hops, I think, around your Parksburg, like outside patio area.
Very aromatic, you're right.
All right, you want to talk about our bourbon pecan?
Do I have time? One more interjection?
Oh yeah, no, totally. We have lots of time.
One last thing, sort of what we're talking about is when I came back from Europe, people were doing these wackadoodle like creme brulees with mango and Tabasco and this and that, but you would ask them to do a simple classic creme brulee and they couldn't do it. So I think that's, a very strict philosophy of, like a Pils, like what Bill does. Show me you can do that classic flavor without mucking it up, and then you have license to play a little bit. But a lot of people are sort of hiding behind, I wouldn't say lack of training, that sounds a little snotty, or snooty, but do that understated flavor profile first, then you can get a little wacky, and so I think that's more of a reserved sort of flavor or sort of philosophy of beer and chocolate that definitely is coming from Europe. So, again, this was the first creation of our sort of mid-century modern sort of, whoa, there we go. And it has my initials on it, which is kind of fun. And bourbon pecan. This would be great for Father's Day. We do a lot of corporate gifts, and this is one of the ones that, for Christmas and for holidays and things like that, and for people, retirees and all sorts of things. And it's such a classic American, I went on a whole Steve Ray Vaughan binge when I was in Europe, because I think when you're away from home, you get more American than you were back home. So I love the sort of the pecan and bourbon. Again, we're playing with the shape, we're playing with the design on top, we're playing on how many levels do we have and which one do we have? Do we have the bourbon on top or the pecan on top? And so that kind of that juxtaposition of how we want the flavor to be released in the story we want to tell. So, the building itself, once all the thought has gone behind it, is fairly straightforward, besides the craftsmanship that we're kind of sticklers about at Eclat. But after that, there's so much thinking, you know, the creativity versus production, sort of all these things are like interwoven to create an experience. How's everyone like that one?
Here's a question for you, Chris. Somebody asked, would you ever do anything with CBD in your chocolates?
Well, sorry, I do a lot of consulting. Colorado, you know, we've done lines for people. I've developed lines and flavor profiles and that. It's not my thing, and to be honest, the people that are sort of involved in that are a lot of people trying to jump onto the whole new gold rush. So, you know, they're here today, gone tomorrow. So, but I enjoy being creative and starting up new lines and sort of and that type of thing. To me, I don't know. I'm not against it. I mean, I know people that do a lot of like all that stuff, but it's just not my thing. So so we don't make any chocolate with CBD or THC, but a lot of my friends are, you know, do the gummies and things like that. It's just not, we're in it for another reason.
Yeah.
You know? So it'd be a great way to make money. I mean, there's definitely, but it's just not I'm not really interested. So, but consulting is fun.
For sure.
Bill?
That's a beautiful chocolate that you've got there. The bourbon aspect of it is so subdued, but it just provides that little bit of warmth that you get on the exhale, and you know that it was enhanced in a way. That's fantastic. So with it, we are serving up one of our strongest beers in terms of overall character and flavor. This is a double IPA. So you may recall an hour and a half ago when we began this wonderful experience together that we were drinking an IPA that was on the hazy side. It had more mouthfeel. It was more lush. It was more fruity. This guy's a little bit more Dirt Wolf double IPA. Is a little bit more about what was traditionally in the early to mid 90s, the thing with India Pale Ales, IPAs, and that was about expressing all of the attributes of the hops, and bitterness is an attribute of the hops. So bitter in beer, it came to be because when you take all the sweet components out of your malt, and before fermentation, they're extremely vulnerable to other microbes other than the yeast that you want to ferment this liquid and create delicious beer. So by hopping the beer, there's a certain antiseptic quality that the hops would provide to the wort, which is the pre-fermentation beer. And so India Pale Ales kind of came from a situation where when there were British troops maintained in India, Britain had to serve beer to those troops to keep them refreshed. And they needed to do so in a manner that these beers arrived in good condition. So they had extra hopping involved in the production of the beers in order to sustain them in the wooden barrels. And so the threat of infection was put really sort of on a back burner. So you know, imperial IPAs like this is sort of a supercharged version of that. And we also use some dry hopping, which actually introduces the hops in a way that they impart no bitterness, but just the aromatic qualities of the hops as well. So I've mentioned the word hops probably a dozen times in this little soliloquy for a good reason. This is all about hops. And it takes a bold chocolate to stand up to it. But I think that we had the right one for it because it was also, it really tamed the wolf of the dirt. I hope you appreciate this one. It's, like I said, it's quite bold.
Who names your beers?
So by and large, that was my job for the majority of our history. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and my business partner, who I met on a school bus in 1973, has a political science and economics degree. So we were the perfect sort of right brain, left brain balance. And he would rely on me for that creativity, and I would balance everything off of him. But this beer actually came from a former employee of ours who I miss terribly. He was a really great guy. His creativity was great. His Latin was terrible. He called this dirt wolf because in Latin, the botanical name for hops is Humulus lupulus. I think he was thinking humus lupulus. Lupulus is wolf, of course. So I think he was thinking dirt wolf, but humulus is not the same.
Great story. Great story. So we're going to go to the southwest of France now, to Bordeaux. Many of you may have already been to Bordeaux to taste wine or visit the area. It's very beautiful. And as you know, most Bordeaux's are described as either being from the left bank or from the right bank. And they're different. Again, I'm going to talk about the soil and the terroir. Again, they're different terroirs. Therefore, different types of grapes grow better based upon the soil. There's also a slight climate differences because of the way the Garonne River comes into the Gironde estuary and then out into the Atlantic. But this particular wine is right bank heavy, which means that it's has more Merlot in it. Left bank is typically grows Cabernet Sauvignon, and the right bank Merlot. And this also has some Cab Franc in it. And when you taste this wine, on the finish, you get this kind of bitterness, and that's from the Cab Franc. Maybe a little bit of I don't know, I don't want to say dirt, but a little funkiness also, and that's the Cab Franc. It can have some green notes to it. And the voluptuousness of this chocolate, it's so rich and delicious. It pairs so well with this rich and quite delicious wine as well, I think. And it is more tannic. It's the most tannic of the ones that we've had so far. But that lends itself to cleansing the palate and you wanting to go back for another bite of chocolate. That's what it does for me anyway.
I have a quick question for each of you. I was curious if you have a podcast or like someone in your industry that you look up to that has, been an inspiration to you, or, that kind of keeps you inspired and motivated, or something like that.
Wow,
And
silence.
maybe you don't have time because you're too busy, working on developing flavors and things like that. But
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big reader of biographies. I like to know how things happened, and so I like revisionist history from Malcolm Gladwell, but it doesn't necessarily relate to what I do. But yeah, I think that my primary creative period, which of course is not over yet, it was at a time when there were no podcasts. It was face to face and knowing your peers.
got it.
I think for me, I mean, the times of I went kicking and screaming to, Calder exhibits up at the Guggenheim and all those things that I still think I'm pulling 90%, well, let's say 75% of those really younger sort of impressions I had that my parents forced upon me at the time, thinking like, why do I want to be interested in that? And also I find that I learn more now outside of my craft than in my craft. That, I get inspired by going to, hang out with savory chefs, or, we talk about, mushroom and thyme, and like, oh, okay, let's see how we can make that work. Or, it's those sort of dares of people sort of throwing down the gauntlet, what we can do in chocolate that makes sense. And that doesn't always happen with other chocolatiers, because most of the chocolatiers, they do safe stuff. They do the raspberry, they do the champagne, they do, if you want to make money, I mean, Bill, I think you know which beers you can make to just like, people would pick it up, So, so we have to balance that. Also from our team, I mean, the team in Eclat is 12 years, I think, is the longest employee now. 13. We have like 5 years, 4 years. So we have a real depth of the team, and they're as motivated, and I get all the credit, but it's definitely a team effort. So I'm inspired by the whole team as well. But you never know. I mean, just hanging out with other chefs or walking in the hardware store and you see like a weird comb or something, you're like, oh, I can use that for showpieces or something like that. So again, I really believe that the longer I'm in this, the more I'm inspired outside, or going up to, a funky art exhibit up in New York or something like that. It's always, or music or Philip Glass or anything funky is more my kind of thing to be inspired. So.
Nice, thanks.
I have listened to some podcasts. There's several very good ones on wine. There's all the way from, amateurs just tasting wine to really very intense study support for serious certifications. And I kind of listen to it all. There's one called Wine for Normal People, which is a husband and wife team, and they just kind of banter back and forth. She is more of a wine professional and he's a curious consumer, if you will, and it's just a really fun banter. And then I guess as far as inspiration, it's going to the source for me, whether it's even a winery in Bechtelsville, Pennsylvania, and talking to the winemaker there who came from Napa, and how he adapts his craft from the place of Napa to north central Pennsylvania, to going to Europe and meeting with vignerons in Burgundy or in Italy. Very fascinating to see, even just to see the instruments and the barrels and the production and how they do their craft is just awe-inspiring, really. It takes a love to be so dedicated to the craft. Because again, in wine, like chocolate and parts of beer too, it's an agricultural product. So they're at the whim of weather and climate and pests, all those things that they need to mitigate in their craft. So the fact that you have something so delicious in your glass or on your plate is really a testament to the hard labor and work and study that the producers go through.
Sure, that's cool. If you didn't do what you do now, what would you do? What other career might you pursue? Or can't even imagine there would be another one.
For me, I would teach. I would teach. I like to teach.
How about you, Bill? If you couldn't do beer, what would you do?
First, let me take a half a step back, if I might. I think that Mary Lou made an incredibly important point, and that is that we synthesize the natural ingredients that our producers give us, and we have to roll with the punches that Mother Nature delivers. And so when we're very empathetic and sympathetic to the people that produce our goods for us, because Mother Nature is their business partner. There is no more capricious business partner than nature. And so, we are very resilient in terms of how we react, but they're even more resilient. So, talk about ongoing learning. A lot of it happens simply from just doing what we're doing. If I wasn't doing what I was doing, I was trained as an artist, and there's not a whole lot of career options for artists. Not to be not to be a raging capitalist, but when I could, create something with my hands that gave me and other people pleasure and I was proud of, I'm like, well, heck, it may not be in 2 dimensions, it may be in a liquid dimension, but let's go with it. So I'll probably spend more time indulging in the arts as I move my way out of the beer industry over time.
Maybe we'll have to have you commission you to do a piece of artwork that we could sell at a silent auction for Rotary at some point.
Sounds like a future challenge.
I believe so. Okay. How about you, Chris?
I'll also step back a little bit about inspiration or also respect for, one of the great things of, the sort of the bipolar work we do is we're in a clean room. And then a week earlier, I'm in Peru in the rainforest and just getting up to like knee in mud and getting torrential rainstorms and things like that. And so we're all over the place with fermentation, with harvesting, and then at the same time back into a kitchen, into a very, clean environment and working in a perfect, environment. So, but when you're with the farmers, you're inspired and you realize how much passion they have. And so that again brings in this amazing, like, I have to do this justice. Like if we over roast the beans or we over conch the beans or we under conch the beans, and conching is the mixing that kind of, it's almost like decanting. We're kind of blowing off flavors we don't want to sort of change the flavor profile of the chocolate that we make. And that just gives us sort of this, it makes us humble actually as a chocolate maker or chocolatier, that we're dealing with these amazing products that we have no control over to extent. We have control over the fermentation profiles and things like that. But yeah, so we're inspired by other chefs and other crafts, but we're also inspired by the farmers a lot of the time. It's just like you go down there and last year, the whole COVID has just decimated a lot of the farmers. And Peru, we haven't gotten beans from Peru in literally year and a half. So it's just, and we've lost some farmers that we've known down there, and it's a real tragedy that, they just, yeah, not to end with a bummer story, but yeah, it's been really rough on them. And so we're trying to also help them as much as possible, but it's just inspiring to see their families and to be down there. So, well, my family is very academic, so I just assumed I'd be a college professor at some point. And so I signed up to be in geology, and that lasted about a semester. I'd always loved to cook, and a future or a past lifetime, I was a cross-country ski racer, nationally ranked, and bike racer. Being from Madison with all the speed skaters and all the Tour de France riders, you're pretty good pedigree of people you're riding with. Cross-country skiing is not a big money sport. So I knew that was not an option. I was actually looking at, the kitchen was pretty much where I was going to be, or believe it or not, I looked seriously at becoming a helicopter pilot. I think I made the right decision, but
Thank
yeah,
you for doing that too, by the way.
Sorry?
I said, thank you for choosing chocolate.
Yeah, well, it's one of those young things, like, oh, that sounds like fun. But again, with Bill, I think we're artists, but also craftsmen, and that's the long debate of, they always say that chefs are artists, and Robuchon and I think Carême said, we're not artists, we're craftsmen, because every day we have to make the same chocolate exactly the same. Maybe how we set it up and design it, there's some artistry in that, but it's being, every day doing the same thing at a high level. That's a craftsman. Artists can paint a painting one day and then do another painting next day. So, but I like both sides of it, and I love everything from being down in the harvest to seeing the fermentation to creating of the chocolate to the end product, and also the packaging and also the marketing is very interesting to me. So it's so many different avenues we can go in that we live at literally 24/7. There isn't much I do in my life that doesn't have to do with chocolate in one way or another. So
Great. Any questions from anyone else? We're going to wrap it up. It's almost 9 o'clock, and I have to say, it was interesting and fascinating and delicious, and I hope everybody else thought so too. It was a great combination and a great conversation. So if you'd like to throw your, yeah, great way to spend a Friday night, agreed. And a great way to support a good cause too. Thanks, Bill. We had a great time putting it together. You guys are always so terrific to work with, and there's always so much to talk about. I mean, you could spend hours on this. Who doesn't love talking about food? So that's great. All right. Well, I have to thank everybody. Thanks again. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks for supporting us and for tasting all these wonderful flavors. And special thanks to Chris and to Bill and to Mary Lou for sharing their time and their knowledge and their personal experience and stories and making this phenomenal. We love you guys. It's just terrific. Thank you.
It's super fun. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
You bet. Thanks.
Thank you for your time.
Keep
Great seeing you,
buying.
Bill.
Keep buying a clot chocolate and keep drinking Victory beer, and Mary Lou can tell you where to get the best wine. So
That's right.
Hopefully
All
see you soon, Mary Lou.
Yes, yes, I'll come over soon.
Okay.
Take care.
Everybody have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
thanks. Great weekend,
everyone.
everybody. And the super prizes will be mailed out on Monday.
Awesome, guys.
Thank you. You bet. Thanks again, Bill. Appreciate it. Thanks, Chris.
Of course, it's a great time.
It always is, right? Please send some
Yes.
warm weather, though. I got to tell you.
This
Bye,
weather's
Frank.
making me homesick.
Oh my gosh, it is so cold today.
Bye, Frank. Bye, Frank.
He's saying bye, Frank.
See ya.
Hi, Maisie.
Hi, Maisie.
That's the girl right here. She's the one that rules the roost.
Not barking at everybody.
No, she actually did pretty good tonight.
Good night, everyone.
All right, good night, everybody.
Poor Frank.
Yep, poor Frank.